I can't
Okay,
wait.
Steve, over to you, mate.
Right, well, thank you for inviting me back. So I'm going to do got about 5 or 6 patterns, see how we get on for time that I'm going to do. A mixture of some dries, some nymphs. Going to start off with a red worm that Tony had been asking me to show him how to do it. So we've got this is a Rex Sedge dry hook, size 10, so quite a big hook. So I'm going to start off with some lead wire. This is the Vineyards 0.5. So I'm just going to put sort of 14 wraps of this round. And just break that off at the back. So I'm just going to set that just around the bend, just there. And then I've got some uni stretch, Vineyards uni stretch. So I'm going to tie that in just in front of it, make a little thread down. And then I'm going to pull it around the back, some loose wraps, just to lock that in. And then come back round and get rid of the tag end. But it's just a case of building up the underbody for this now. So just going to flatten the thread a bit. You want to just create almost like a rugby ball shape at the back. So, and this goes really flat. So if you counter spin it, you get a nice flat thread. Takes a little bit of time. I think when this is going to be covered with nymph skin. So the thing with that is you need to have your underbody right. Otherwise, it'll look like a dog's dinner. So it's worth spending a little bit of time just to get that right. Now we're going to come down onto the shank. And you want to stop a little bit before the eye, and I'll show you why when we come to tie this off in the end. So you can get, so I'm stopping probably an eye's width back. And then I'm just going to come back. Just to get that nice and smooth. So there's a nice transition to that sort of rugby ball at the back, if you will. And then back down. And then the reason I've left that space there is because when I tie off now, I can fill that in. And then when I actually tie it off, it'll all be level. You see that? Got a little bit of frayed edge there, but it's not going to make any difference. So just cut that away now. And then I'm just going to come in with some GSP nano silk, something like that. And then just tie that in. Get rid of your tag end. So then this is some virtual nymph skin. This is the translucent. So a little bit like the same stuff we used last time when I tied a couple of patterns. So this has got a polished edge and a dull side. So we want it polished side on the outside. So I'm just going to cut a little leading edge on it. Like that. And I'm going to take this silk down to the back and just tie this in. So I'm tying it in with the flat edge down to the desk. And the reason for that is when I start my wraps, it'll then sort of hide that edge as well. So you go right down into your bend, tie it in, and then come back up to your eye. So I'm just going to put a sort of half hitch in here. And then I'm going to just rest that out the way. So now I'm going to take a red marker pen. You can see that? So I actually got these at the BFFI. These are brilliant. Cure Colour, they're called. They're fantastic. On if you want to colour quills and things like that, they really soak in. So just going to cover the whole underbody with red marker. You need to be a little careful that you don't catch that nymph skin.
Who was stocking those pens, Steve?
Oh God, who was it now? Oh, trying to think who it was. You can get, they're on Amazon. There's a lot, you can get them anywhere. They are on Amazon. I can't think of the company which I bought them from now. I've been looking for an olive one, but everywhere I've looked, they're out of stock. But they've got all the other colours on Amazon.
Are they called again? Cure
Pure
color.
colour they're called. They're a twin one, so you've got. Let me just get that in front of the camera. You've got a thick edge, and then on the other side you've got a thin.
Oh, tidy.
And they actually say they're refillable as well. I'm not really sure how that works, but they're brilliant. I tried colouring some natural quills with some of the, you know, the Windsor Worth ones, which you see a lot of these ones. I don't know if you can see that. These ones. Windsor Newton, sorry, not Windsor Worth. But they just seem to sit on top of the quill. Whereas I did one in red and it literally just soaked into it. And it doesn't leach when you put any resin on and things like that as well. So just missed a little bit there, so just get that. Right, so that's all now coloured in red. And then I'm going to take a black one. I'm going to get the fine point here. What I'm going to do, just on this sort of rugby ball, I'm just going to put a black sort to mimic sort of the feed gland. Like that. And then a little bit on the front. And this will just show through because of that translucent nymph skin. Right, so we're good there. So now just a case of wrapping the nymph skin. So you don't want to stretch too much at first because sometimes that edge can sort of twist round. So you just need to make sure that this cut edge is the leading edge because then you can wrap over the top of it. So just do some nice segments. And then the more you stretch, the more you will actually see that colour underneath. So, and after a couple of wraps, you'll actually see it. You get like a little ridge here. So I'm just following that with every turn, just so you've got nice even segments. And then as you come onto the shank, you want to give it a real good stretch because you don't want it too thick here. So you want quite a nice slim body.
You can see the marker pen coming through already.
Yeah, no, it looks great, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I got a question. How do you just feel when you have to, as I would say, like pull more on the thin skin to get a better shape? What's the I'd say like pinching point or
it's almost, I'm going to do another pattern in a bit using the same, and it's almost a bit like muscle memory, really. I think you've got to do a few, and then you know how much, because the less you stretch, the thicker your body will be. I mean, it's a bit different on this pattern, but on the pattern I'm going to tie in a little bit. If you slacken off, you'll get more bulbous body. You see, so it just comes with practice, mate. The more you do, you kind of learn how much to stretch it, really. So go right up to the end, just a little bit short here, so 1 second. Right.
Yeah, you've got to go some to actually break it, haven't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could stretch that for it. I mean, thing is, if you stretch it too much, it will disform when you let off. You can see if you overstretch it. So got a straggler there. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. So you don't want to come too far to the eye. If you bring this over too much, you're not going to get a nice head on this. So you do want to leave a little bit at the front of the just behind the eye. So I'm just going to take the Nano Silk. and you want to really go tight on this, and then a few in front, because the last thing you want to do is cut this now, and then all that hard work you've done just will come undone. So you need to stretch this quite a bit here to get it to be a neat head as you cut it. Right, so I'll just do a few safety wraps there. So now I'm going to take my black marker again, and I'm just going to colour this thread up. And then it's literally just a case of building up the head and hiding those cuts that you've just done. And I want a nice, quite a big head on these. Not massive, but just sort of right proportion. Happy with that. So I'll just tie this off now. Put that away. So now what we're going to do is I'm just going to readjust this slightly because I'm going to put some resin on this now. So I'm using 2 resins on this. So the first one's super thin Raids that. So historically I used Gulf, but I much prefer this stuff now. It's not got the tack that you get with Gulf, but unfortunately I've only got the super thin and some coloured ones at the moment. But if you did this with just thin, you stand a risk of losing that segmentation. So this is literally like water, this stuff. So you've got to be careful with it because you will end up with it everywhere if you pour too much on. And then just take my bodkin and just cover that. Now you also need to be a little careful when you're going up to the head. The reason for that is if you get this on that marker, you can potentially smudge it. So I'm not going to put it on the head. I'm just going to got a little bit too much there, so I can just dab that off. With that, so I'm just going to give that a blast with my UV torch. So then what I'm going to get is just going to readjust this. So I'm going to do the head now. So this is actually some Gulf Thin Man that I'm using for this. So this does take a steady hand. Because you can see there that you know it's not that neat at the moment, but as soon as you put this resin on, you can really neaten that head up. But again, you need to be a little careful because you can, as I say, smudge that marker. Yeah, so happy with that. And then just give that a blast. So I find if you're using all Gulf resin, then you can, if you're careful, you can just dab it with your finger and still get that segmentation. But I'd recommend that you put maybe varnish it as well, because it can dull the Gulf. Whereas that Raid Zap's brilliant. And that's, let me straighten that for you so you can see it a bit better. That's the finished fly. Any questions? Alois?
Have you tried UV varnish on the top after you finish, Steve, or not?
I haven't, because I'm switched to, I've only really started tying this one when I got the raid zap, and I've never felt the need to use that. So as I say, the raid zap, there's no tack on that at all, and that just stays the colour. Whereas if I'd have done the body in Gulf, it would have gone potentially milky.
No, I mean like the UV, rock hard
UV
varnish.
Yeah, I've not, to be honest, I've not used, I've never really used the UV varnishes. It's always just the resins I've used, to be fair. Oh, might give it a go.
Yeah, body. You used some body material and the first time to cover the lead and stuff. Is it it was from Renyard, yeah?
Yeah, it's Vineyard Unistretch.
So it's flexible stuff.
Yeah, it's where's it gone? Yeah, so it actually looks like. Let me just try and get it in focus for you.
Like a rubber band.
Not rubber. It's more like cotton wool, to be honest with you. If you were to just look at it like that.
Ah, okay, yeah. And this stuff soaks up brilliantly your red color.
It does. What I sometimes on some flies, so like a waxworm or something like that, or if I was doing a maggot, I'd actually put it on and then I'd super glue it, because it does, you can see where it bleeds. It's not so bad when you've done a body, say, of red, and then you put the black on because you kind of sealed it with the red. But if you were to just go straight onto white and put like black marker or something for say, a maggot, it can bleed out to the edges. So I've just put some super glue on.
Nice, cool material.
Over the top of the super glue.
I've not used that stretch, Steve. Do you use it for a lot of things?
I use it up. I only really use it for underbodies. I think it's just brilliant for underbodies when I'm doing anything with nymph skin. It just builds up the body so quickly, and it goes so flat that you can get a perfect underbody. Because if that wasn't, if I'd got sort of lumps and things, you'd see that on the nymph skin itself. So,
thank you.
Yeah, brilliant, and perfect pattern for me. Sorry, really good stuff.
What it's for, Elias?
As Timmy Wood said, you could tie things other than squirmies.
That's Chris, isn't it? Chris is the squirmy man. He's here. I bet he's tying some now. I can see him.
You leave me out of this.
Right, so I'm going to tie a dry now because I've done a couple before, so it's already all set up. So you'll have probably all seen a foam done before, but I'm going to do a slightly different one because I tie one that I use for a spinner. So this is a SLD2. I tie these in 14s, 16s, 18s. I've got 14s in just to make life easy for me when I'm live on video. What I've got here is some UTC 70, and this is burnt orange. So just going to tie that in, probably 2 widths of the eye back. I've lost a pair of scissors. Yeah. Just tie that in and then come back up to your tying point. And then I'm going to get some CDC. So depending on obviously how good your CDC is or how big the fly is, will depend how many you want. But normally on a 14s, I would probably use 3 feathers and then go down to sort of 2. So I'm going to take 3 nice feathers there, just line all the tips up. Got all the tips nicely aligned. And tie that in shank length. And then you want to leave a little bit of space in front. I'm going to cut these butts out, but on an angle. And then lock them down.
Answer a question. Sorry.
Yeah, of course you can. Just fire away, mate.
I'm asking myself when I see, especially Tim tying or yours now, how you actually just align the fibers that perfectly.
Well, I can show you if you want. So I get my 3 feathers. So let me find 3 good ones.
Because they look like one feather which has been grown like really fat, you know?
Yeah, so let me see if I can. I don't know if I can do this with the camera, but I'd take. I'm going to struggle here, mate. I don't think you're going to see it, but I basically have one on the flat of my finger, and then
I can't see that, buddy. I can't see that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to struggle because it won't pick it up on the camera. But I basically just place them on top, just stack them on top of each other, and then you can, if you're holding
Okay.
the light into
Bit
the
more
light,
down, bit more down. Yeah, yeah.
you know, if you can see that, you can push one up if you need to,
Yeah.
or down to
Yeah.
get them aligned. So it's hard on that macro lens because it won't pick anything up other than what it's focusing on.
But are these 1, 2, or 3? No, these are minimum 2, but are these maybe 3 feathers as well?
3 I've put in here.
Okay.
If I was doing a 16s or an 18s, I'd only have 2 in. So I'm gonna counter spin my thread just to flatten it and go back to just before the bend. And I'm gonna take some coq de Leon. And if you just pull those 90 degrees from the stem, all the tips will line up. Now, the normal foam done that I tie, I use primrose. I actually tie these with a really short tail because for me, the foam done, it fishes more like an emerger. It doesn't sit on top of the water. The foam's not floating it. That foam's just profile. So might get shot for saying this now because it's being recorded, but the peacock, you can't use emergers. But because the fly will sit in the water like that, the tail's more of a shuck than actually to keep it on the top of the water, you see. Whereas this one, because it's a spinner, I'm going to tie the tail at the normal length. So the size of the shank, tie that in on the top, a little bit long there. A little bit long. So I'm just going to tie that back up to where the CDC was tied in and just cut away those tips. And then this is some Wapsi razor foam. Now, there's loads of different closed cell foams, but this stuff comes in, this is the packet. I'm going to see that, get it in focus for you. So this stuff comes, you get 2 sheets of 0.5 mil and 2 sheets of 1 mil, whereas most foams are 2 mil, they're sort of quite thick. So this is the 1 mil, which I'll use on 14s. If I'm going down to like an 18s, I'd use the 0.5 mil. And this is the opaque brown, this is. It's not that easy to get. I've been struggling to find any more, but luckily I've got about 5 packets still. This stuff's from a place called Fly Shed, but he's sold out of all the brown. So I've just cut a little point in the end. And I'm going to tie that in just at the back. See where that little sort of nib is, where I've put the CDC. I'm going to just tie that in. And as I'm tying down, I'm going to stretch it. But I want to make sure that my thread's flat as well. Now, if you stretch too much, you will snap this. So you don't want to pull too hard. But if you tie it in at the tail, you're going to end up with a bump. So whereas if you tie it in there, it'll give you that nice profile. And then come right down to the tail like that. Yeah. And then I'm just going to build this body up now. So I'm going to flatten my thread and I'm just going to create a nice taper. That's probably a little shy, to be honest. I'm going to come forward a little bit. So I'm happy with that. So come back down. And then you want to taper these segments. So I put 3 segments in, but you want to go small, medium, large, if you will. So I'm going to wind that thread back up to cord it up and pull my foam over. And then 1, 2, and then come under. And then I'll flatten it again. And then slightly bigger and cord it. And I stretch this a little bit as I'm tying it as well. So 2. And then flatten it. And then I just want to, just not quite right here. So I'm just going to build that bit up a little bit. Right. And then 1 and 2, and then I'm going to lift the CDC up and come in front. And I'm going to create a little dam there just to prop that CDC up. So then what I do here is I just put my scissors on and kind of like push down and pull up to cut it. That went wrong. So now I'm going to take this is just some pine squirrel. I can find which one it's in. You don't want too much. And you don't want to tie this on tight. You just want to dub it on quite loosely because you want some of the guard hairs to come out as well. So it's just a case of neatening that cut up at the back, and then I come in front and do and then I'll spin this up. Now, I don't, rightly or wrongly, really varnish the heads on my dries. I just tend to put a bit of wax on. So let's just case of whip finishing.
Which kind of wax are you using there?
That it's just a beeswax, I think. It's actually it was from Vicuna. That I got about 3 BFFIs ago. So you can get it's just beeswax, I think.
So it's kind of sticky when it's cold, or is it getting sticky when it's getting warmer? Like you just
Warm it up, you'll be able to mold it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's the same stuff like David McPhail puts on his finger there.
Yeah, these little dots he has on his fingers, yeah, and everywhere some wax, you know.
Yeah. So, as I say, I use that as a spinner pattern. Stray there, get rid of that. So, any questions? No.
No, but I would say like this is a super buoyancy pattern because you have the back with some stuff that floats.
It does, that foam doesn't float, Alois. That doesn't act as any buoyancy. It's the CDC and the tail that'll keep that up.
Okay, but I would say like that the foam has bubbles in it and it floats as well. So
Closed cell, there's no bubbles. It's closed cell foam. So
okay.
it will have an element, but if I tied that tail to there, which is what I do on my, I would probably have it that short on me, on the primrose one that I do, but that will ride like that in the water. So it's all just profile that foam.
Hmm. When I use foam, I use it a bit more like I wouldn't say more compressed. I would say like a bit more fluffy.
Yeah,
And then I have the buoyancy in it, you know?
yeah. If it was you do tying like a beetle or something like that with the 2mm foam, I mean, it's still closed cell, but when you're tying the underbody, I think I tied one last time, you're not retching down on that underbody and sort of compacting it. You're leaving it so that it's buoyant, but there's so little foam on that I don't think it actually acts as any flotation.
Yeah, just
That's the-
thought. Yeah.
Right. So you're gonna have to give me a second because I'm gonna have to just change some thread here for you. So, but anyone any questions or all happy with that? Is everyone falling asleep?
You tie them in different colours, like
Yeah, well, actually,
Yellow,
Jack
green.
got onto this one, so I'll give Jack credit for this. So I tie it in primrose or light Cahill, and then I'd use the rusty orange as a spinner. But Jack tied some in black foam, black body for the older grub, and they worked last season, which I thought was quite clever. So I'll be tying some black ones this season for the older grubs.
some olives.
You could do it in olive, yeah. I think Tim does an olive one as well. You can do them in any colour. The original one from Craig McDonald was primrose, and that's the one I've always used. It's one of my best early season dries, to be honest.
If you don't think, Stephen, that the foam is doing any buoyancy, what's the main reason you use a foam and not just do your body with something else?
The profile that it gives, the segmentation that it gives. Especially when it's riding body in the water. How right I am, I don't know, but that's my theory. It definitely doesn't float because I've watched them come down past me, and they're all butt in the water. Obviously, that will ride on top because I've made the tail long enough, and it's it's proper stiff cocktail on, so that won't sink. But the primrose ones, I want them to fish like an emerger because I'm not allowed to use emergers, so it's a dry fly still, technically.
That's what I was just about to say. Where we fish, you're only allowed to use what they call dry fly, so you're not allowed to use an emerger. So a dry fly, in theory, has got to be tied on a straight hook
with a tail.
With a tail, yeah. So how we get away with it a little bit is the foam just does make it sink that little bit, so it does cock, like Stephen said. So that's why we use that fly a hell of a lot.
We've not broke the rule.
Mate.
So right, I'm going to tie a Quill Perdigon now. So a little nymph that I use. So I've put some olive UTC 70 in my bobbin. I'm just going to grab a hook and a bead. So I'm going to take a 3.5mm jig off bead, like the teardrop beads. I'm going to get one of those. And then a little jig hook. So this is a size 20. So I do these in 4mm, 3.5mm, and down to 3mm. So this is a copper bead that I'm putting on.
Can you hear this, Chris?
So I'm just going to get a little bit of super glue just to stick that on. So this is I've used the gel on this. I find that when you try to stick a bead, the gel's better. It's got a bit more substance to it. Right. So first off, I'm going to come in with some GSP. This is black. with the colour I've just done, so I'll get rid of the first bit. So I'm going to take that down just before the bend. I'm going to get a bit of cock dully on. Probably want 4 or 5 fibres. So again, just if you just pull them 90 degrees to the stem, you'll align the tips. And then I don't want my tail too long on this, so literally the size of the body. And get that on top of the hook, on top of the shank. A little bit long, so I'm just going to pull that down. Yeah. Right, so I'm going to tie that back up to the bead. And then we can do away with their ends. So next material I'm going to come in with is a opal mirage tinsel. This is in the small. So I'm going to put a little pearly butt on this. So I'm going to tie it back down to just where we tied the tail in. And the reason I use the nano silk here is if I was to do that in the UTC, I'd just build the body up too much because I want a nice slim body on this. So I'm just going to do a couple of wraps. At the butt. So the tag's not too long on this. You know, it's just a real subtle.
To be honest, buddy, there was a great technique to just put in the flash and stroke it back till there's no end to just cut off, you know?
Yeah. Although if you pull too hard, you do what I did and pulled it right through the first time. So I'm going to tie that right back up as well because it'll just keep my body smooth. That. So then cut away. And then I'm going to tie this off and come back in then with my UTC. Right, so now we're going to take a stripped quill. So this is a golden olive. So I always moisten these a little bit to try and avoid them breaking on me, but no doubt it will do because I'm on camera. So I'm just going to cut the waist end off. And then you can get some water or you can just moisten it in your mouth. So while I tie that in. So the way I tie these in, so the black edge I'll have up, and I want to tie this on my side. So not on the top. I think if you tie it on the top, when you make that first wrap, you don't get a very neat back edge. So I'm going to just come down a little.
Steve,
yes.
so when you tie that, you've got the black, you say you've got the black edge up. Is the black,
black edge is up because I'm going to wrap the same way I'm going to wrap the thread. So that's going to mean that the black leading edge, the black edge will be the back of the fly.
it's away from you, the black edge, up
Yeah,
away from you.
Yeah. So it's to the back of the hook when you make your first wrap. Obviously, if you wrap the way you would wrap your thread.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to tie that in there on the side. And then come back down to that butt. So as I say, I don't want too much of the tinsel showing. It's only a subtle tag. So let's check what we've got there. So now I'm just going to build a little taper, so flattening my thread and just smooth all this off. And as I say, I want it thin, but I still do want a taper to it. So do that, I think. So, right. So I'm just going to take a hackle plier. But my first wrap I'm going to do by hand and just fold it over to try and avoid snapping it. And then I'm going to use my rotary on this. So I want touching turns. And then the key here is when you get up to the back of the bead. So I'm just going to undo those extra wraps I've put on using my rotary. Is you want to tie this off at the top, because when I make this cut, everything will be hidden at the top. Whereas if you did it underneath, you wouldn't have a neat cut off. So cut that out, and then literally just tie this off. So, and again, I'm going to tie it off so that my cut is on the thick side of the bead like this. Right. So now I'm going to get some. This is the Gulf Thin Man resin. So it's just like a Perdigon. This. So real thin fly, sinks quickly. So you don't want too much resin, but you do want to build a nice body with it. And give that a blast. So then the next thing to do is put a wing case on it. So again, I'm going to use some resin for that. Now, if you don't have black resin, you can nick some of your missus's nail varnish if she's got some black nail varnish. What I do here, though, a good little tip for you, is to get this in. If you tilt your fly down, I think when you're using resins, gravity is your friend. So it still requires a bit of a steady hand, but I'm going to put, and sorry you won't be able to see this perfectly, because otherwise I'll make a mess of it. So I'll just put a little case on there, and then give that a blast. And that's the fly finished. Any questions?
That's a Quill Perdigon.
It's a Quill Perdigon. Yeah, it's a Devon Olsen pattern. He's what he fishes for America. It's caught me. I've caught grayling on it. I've caught trout on it. It's one of my go-tos, to be honest with you. As I say, with it being it is a Perdigon, so it sinks fast. These jig beads weigh a lot heavier than their slotted counterparts. You know, and these ones that I've got, I mean, we put them on a magnet and they don't stick at all. They're brilliant.
They turn upside down as well, don't they?
Yeah, it'll ride like that when you're fishing it. Yeah. So, you know, you could use that. You don't have, this is like a short jig hook. You could use it on a dry fly hook and it'll always invert your hook. I've used loads of these beads. I love them.
Did you say it's jig off beads?
Yeah, they're called jig off, or some people call them teardrop beads.
Lovely.
That's that one. Right.
Brilliant
So-
stuff. Brilliant stuff.
No, thank you. So, well, while I've got these threads and stuff, I'll do you the reverse quill jig. Now, just give me 1 second. I just need to check something. Yeah, you need to put some glow bright in a bobbin, so just bear with me. So this is glow bright number 4. Right. So using another jig off bead, but this time it's a silver one. So I'm going to go with, I'll do it in a 4mm this one. So I tie the, sorry Derek, did you say something?
What size hook, Steve?
I'll do these in a 18/16s, 18s and 16s. So I put a 4mm on a, sorry, on a 14s. 4mm on a 14s and do a 3.5 on a 16s. I tend to only tie these in 3.5 and 4mm, to be honest. I tend to use it as a point fly. So, got 14s out. I'm going to put the bead on. Now I may have to adjust my camera because I tend to tie this a little bit more. Can you? Oh no, you can see that. It's fine.
Is that a RX hook again? Is it?
No, that is a K4AY. I think it is that one. Partridge one.
Okay, strong hook, isn't it?
So I'm gonna get the glow bright. Helps if I fasten my vise first. So I'm going to tie some glow bright in front of the bead because I'm going to create a little hot spot here. So it's a little bit of trial and error because it'll all depend how good or how bad the beads are that you've got, because you might have a big hole in them or you might have a small, so it depends how much you need to build up. Because what I want to do is create a little head in front of that as a little trigger. So it is just literally a case of trial and error to get it right. So there's enough on there. So I'm going to tie that off now. I'm going to get some resin. So this again is just the Gulf Thin Man, but any resin would do really, as long as it's sort of medium viscosity you'd want. So you don't need too much. So I'm literally just going to put a little bit on the head here. And then turn that upside down and push that bead forward. And then give it a zap. And that'll fix my bead in position. And also have a nice little trigger point in front of it. Right. So I'm just going to readjust this a little bit. And now coming in with some UTC 70 in olive. We'll just tie that in. Thread, and we're going to come round just to the point that if I let it rest, it's probably in line, just where the barb would be, really. Maybe one more turn there. Right, let's flatten that. And again, going to get some Coq de Leon. So this is medium Pardo. But, you know, any would do. This is real Coq de Leon. You could use any of the whiting stuff if you wanted. So just level all those tips. Again, don't want the tail too big. So this, I suppose, this is a little bit like a crossover. It's a little bit like a Perdigon, but it does have some dubbing on this one. But it, again, with that bead, it sinks fast. So just shorten that a bit. Right, that'll do. So I'm going to tie this back up all the time, making sure my thread's flat so I get a nice smooth body. Take your butts out. Level that up again. Right, so this is where I tend to tie this upside down now. So I'm going to come back to just before where I've tied the tail in. And we're going to take another stripped quill, again in golden olive, but you could do this in natural, you could do it in just olive. You know, you could even do it in a multitude of colours. Give this a moisten. Tie that down to where the tail is. And just flatten this. And then all we want to do is now just build a nice taper. So I love this UTC thread for flies like this. It lies so flat, and the olive colour that they do is just like no other olive. Every other olive just looks green to me, whereas this has got a nice shine to it. Right, so happy with that. So turn my vise round again. So again, like we did last time, just going to take the quill round first by hand so I don't snap it off. Feel I have a little bit more control on the first wrap. And then put my pliers on. Right, so again, just going to use my vise to rotate. You could hang your thread out the way. I just don't tend to really bother. I just back it off once I get up to the top. And again, like on the last fly, I'm going to tie this off behind the biggest point of the bead. That way it'll be a neat finish, something like that. Take your butts out. So I'm just going to tie this off now and get rid of the thread. Now I'm going to come in with some thin man resin again. You can tell I quite like using resin. So you don't need too much. And then give that as that. Just cure it. Now I'm going to also put a wing bud on this, but what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to turn the fly upside down. I'm going to take my black resin. I'm just going to put a little dot on top of the bead. Like that. And cure that. And then finally, just come back in with your GFP or your nano silk or whatever it is you're using. The reason I do this is when I put this dubbing on and tie off, it'll just hide. You won't even see that nano silk then. I'm just going to put a thorax in. So I'm going to use, this is SLF Whitlocks blend, and it's the red fox squirrel I use for this one. You don't want too much. A little bit more there. Lewis, and then just tie that off. And by using that, if I'd have used the UTC, I'd have had an olive collar there, whereas this just disappears into the dubbing. And that's the reverse quill jig. Any questions?
Where do you
Lloyd?
fish that on the cast, Steve?
I always have this as a point fly. It's always my point fly. So I tend to be, obviously do a lot of Euro nymphing, so it'd be my point fly on my Euro normally. I've caught in Bosnia on that on the Sana as well.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted, you could tie them, the great thing with those jig off beads is you can use a big bead on a small hook. You can do that. And still have loads of hook gape.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
So, and I think there's just something about that little trigger at the, it's just a subtle trigger point, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not on your face. So yeah, that's that one.
They from Ian Gillard, Steve.
Sorry.
Are the jig off beads from Ian Gillard?
I'm trying to think where I've got them from. I have had them from him in the past. I've used some of the fully mill ones before as well. They're quite good. Some of the Fasna ones are all right. Well, the Fasna ones are really nice. The coloured ones, really nice. So I've actually, I only just got some of the Fasna ones recently, and the consistency of them was brilliant. I have had some of the fully mill ones before, and all the coppers were off them before I even took them out of the packet. So, but yeah, it's I have had them off Ian as well. So that's that one. Right, I'll do you another dry now. How long have we done, Derek?
We've been on an hour so far. You got plenty of time. It's unlimited.
Right, I'm going to do you a dry now, a large dark olive. So just have to bear with me, change my threads again. So I'm going to put some, this is sheer in brown 14-0. So I love this sheer for dries. It's strong and it's really thin. And it's quite a flat thread as well.
I think it's a great all-round thread, Steve.
It is.
I use it nearly all the time now.
I use it, to be fair, I would say 90% a lot of times with sheer, to be honest. They use the UTC when I'm doing things like perdigons, just because of that olive colour. It just blends so well when you do it, especially on a perdigon when you've no thorax or dubbing. It blends in so well with the golden olive, you see, for me. Put this in the right way. Right. So this is a pattern actually Sean Thomas showed me, and it's been a great fly for large darks for me. So I'm going to get a Partridge SLD2. Again, I tie these mainly in 14s and 16s. Get that in the hook. Sorry about this, we've got an tangle here, just give me a second. So I'm going to start probably an eye's width back. Back to front where I've tied it in. And again, going to use some CDC. So like we did with the foam done, just going to get 3 feathers and just line the tips up. So again, just going to do the same size as the shank. And you want to leave not too much in front, but you do need a little bit in front because we're going to put a hackle in this in the end. So again, just cut on a taper. You get a nice tapered body. Like that. And again, we're going to use some Coq de Leon. Find where I've put it. There it is. Right. So just line your tips up like we've done all the others. I'm going to do this again, the length of the, not very well aligned. Just give me 1 second. There. Right, so body length. So I've got a flat thread here, so I'm going to tie that in on the top. And then a little bit along that. I'm going to tie that in on the top like that, and then I'm going to cord this up, because what I want to do is I'm going to pull this under so that we can then split, you know, sort of spread that tail like that, and then a wrap to lock it off. Then I'm going to flatten the thread again. So that's now, see how it's splayed like that. Back up to where we've cut that taper for the CDC and get rid of our butts. Till I'm getting to the end of this feather, because now my butts are tiny. Alright, just neaten those up a little bit. So now what I'm going to take is some, might be a bit long that, but so this is sheer primrose or light kale, so I'm going to just cut a piece of that off. It's a little bit long, that tail, but so I'm just doubling this over. And then I'm going to just pull it under and then slide it down to the tips. Being careful not to pull it through. I'm going to tie back down to the tail all the time, making sure my thread is flat. Right to the end. Go. So now I'm just going to sort this profile out, because I just want a nice smooth transition of where that CDC has been tied in. So just level that off a little bit. Like that. So now what I'm going to do is, if I can find it, I'm going to take this hackle plier, a CNF one. I'm going to spin this up, if I haven't got it caught on here. So I'm just going to pinch that and cut the waste away there. I'm just going to cord this up. And this is just going to act as the rib. So just do some even turns. And then tie that off. A couple of turns behind, a couple of turns in front.
Totally accurate. Perfect.
Sorry, say that again, Alois.
Totally accurate. Can I say that?
Yeah, not well. The tail isn't, but the rib is. Tails.
The rib is boom.
Thank you. The tail's a little bit long, but right. So now I'm going to get this is a badger hackle. So just the whiting badger hackle. And I'm going to strip some of the fibres off the butts. But then I always do, and you'll probably know this, I'm just going to take a few off of the leading edge. Just helps get a nice neat edge. A nice neat wrap, should I say. So just going to wax my thread. So we get a nice tie in. I'll tie that in like that. And then put this down a little bit. And then just tie to the front. And then lift your CDC. And then I'm going to prop this. So I'm just going to create a thread down to kick that CDC up. And then back down to the eye. So I'm just going to do sort of 2 full wraps behind. Pull my CVC feather back. And 1, 2 wraps in front, 2.5. There we go, yeah. And then I'm going to pull that back. And then cut the butts out. Like that. And then just create a little head. So again, just putting some wax on. Just create a nice little head there. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is turn this upside down. I'm just going to take all the feathers, all the fibres off from underneath, so it'll sit nice on the water. There we go. As simple as that. That's the large dark olive that I use a lot. I've used that in Bosnia as well. Actually, some of the big olives are coming off this year. Any questions?
Nice pattern that, Steve.
No, thanks. Well, I can't claim it. It's what Sean Thomas pattern that he showed me.
Yeah, awesome stuff. But I know from Tim that he always tells me like to cut away all the fibers in the bottom section. But you did like cut like left and right way a bit more down so that okay now yeah now there are a few fibers, 2 or 3 maybe sticking out in the bottom section, but if you cut with a curved scissor, like only from the front into the bait or into the fly, then you have a bit more like legs into the water. Is it more like they fear of it, or you can?
What I'll do is, so I tie a fill like mayfly, and I actually just cut a V out of that, so I do have legs because it doesn't matter. That will always land the right way up. But that one, I want it to just sit a little bit lower in the water.
So it's a merger.
No, it just sits low. It's not an emerge. It's just sitting lower in the water. That's all.
Okay. So a
But
bit fatter and juicier. Yeah.
It's going to sit a little bit lower than it would if I had just cut. You could quite easily. I tend to leave them hackled and do it on the bank. To be honest with you, because then I can decide if I want to cut them off or if I just want to have it a bit higher in the water.
Just sits
Yeah.
in the film as opposed to on the
Yeah.
surface, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Stinky.
Yeah.
So
Nice
that
stuff.
one.
Nice stuff indeed. Sorry. Pretty. With the ribbing, nice one.
Thanks, Elias. How many have we done there? 1, 2, 3. Do you want one more?
Yeah,
go on,
please, Steve. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you might remember, the last time we tied, I did a scruffy caddis, and I mentioned about doing lateral lines on a fly, and someone asked me how I did them, and I said with great difficulty. I'm gonna, for my sins, attempt it tonight for you. Well, it could go all wrong, so we'll see. Right. Bear with me a second. Right, so I'm going to get a crab cooper, a partridge crab cooper. I'm going to find that. So this is more of a grayling, well, it is a grayling bug, to be honest with you. So, I'm going to get a size, it's actually a size 10, so it's a big fly. I'm going to get a 4mm countersunk bead. And this is sort of one of the natural tungsten ones. So you could use black nickel. I mean, you could use any bead you want, really, but I quite like the natural tungsten one for this.
What size hook are you using, Steve?
This one's it's a partridge grab pupa. This is a size 10 with a 4mm bead. So this is a point fly I use quite a bit for the grayling. So I'm going to take some uni stretch again. So this is using the virtual nymph skin again. So first of all though, before I do that, I am going to tie in some GSP. I'm just going to adjust the hook because I'm going to put some, this is uni 8/0 in brown. So I'm just going to cut a length of that. I'm going to come up to the bend. So you could tie these both in at the same time, but I tend to do one at a time. So I'm going to just pull my thread under my tying thread and lock that in on my side and go right down into the bend like that, and then come back up a couple of turns. And then I'm going to get rid of this tag end. So I've cut this longer than it needs to be. So I'm going to cut it down a little bit. And then I'm going to put one on your side, but I'm going to cheat and turn that to my side so I can see it better. So just bear with me. So you want one either side of your hook shank, because we're going to use these as the lateral lines going up the fly. So tie that in and do away with that piece. So it won't be for everyone this, it's a quite a long fly to tie, and then you can chuck it in a tree on your first cast, so it's not for everyone, but I think I quite enjoy tying them. So I'm now going to leave this nano silk or GSP at the butt end, and I'm going to hang it out the way, get it out of my way, just hang it there, because I'm going to need that when I get to the end. So I'm going to get my uni stretch, and we're just going to create a nice underbody. So we're going to go right down to where that brown thread is, and then back up. So we're going to do this in stages to create a taper. Now, what you need to be careful of here, you don't want to go all the way back to the bead like that. You need a bit of space for this, so leave it short. So that's enough. And then come back down. And then we're going to just stop short of where we've finished the first wraps. Like that, and then back up. And again, as I say, just don't crowd that bead because it'll cock things up for later on. And again, we're just going to stop short, so just creating a nice taper. Right. So then I'm going to flatten this, because what I want to do is I want to make that taper smooth. So I'm going to flatten the thread and just smooth all this off. It's brilliant, this stuff for underbodies. Now I do want this quite bulbous when we get to this point. almost want, when I've tied it, the body to be bigger than the bead, if you will. So don't be afraid of building it up here. Right, and then I'm going to tie that off and get rid of it. Right. So I'm going to take another bobbin, again with some more GSP in it. And I'm going to get some of the natural nymph skin, sorry, translucent nymph skin. And again, just create that point like we did on the first fly. And again, you want the shiny side up. So again, just creating that. So then tie in your thread. I'm just going to knit this in. And you want to stretch this as you've got tied down to the base. Like that. And then bring your thread up to the top. Now, up to you how you do this. I tend to just tie this off and get it out the way. You can hang it, because you are going to need to come back in with it, but I just prefer it out the way. So I'll take that off. So then, much like we did with the worm, we're just going to create a nice body. Nice segmentation. So, and this is Alois, where you said, how do you know how much to stretch? Because I want this top part here to be quite, you know, quite weighted, if you will.
Yeah,
Stretch
yeah,
it
yeah.
a bit here.
Definitely, but I have to admit that the first 3 turns you did, they were like, okay, if I do that, or if I would do that, and the fucking string would break. Because these first 3 turns were like crazy thin, you know?
No, you don't. This it would take some breaking. That will take. You literally, it's almost like you're going around like you would with a quill, really, because you just do your first wrap.
Yeah, but hey, what you have tied in, it's maybe half of a millimeter.
Yeah, well, don't be so butch. Go light. I was going to say something else then, but it definitely wasn't
Hey,
appropriate.
yeah, but that looks like, yeah, okay. Maybe you have done like I don't know, 500 or 1,000 flights before.
Yeah, it does take some getting used to, but you to snap that, you'd have to go outside.
Yeah, maybe, but
Stretches forever.
to be honest, I never had that stuff in my hand like you have right now. And I'm really kind of interested how it works, you know, but it looks quite difficult. So sorry about that.
It's not as hard as it looks. It's not. So I'm just going to follow those segments. But as I come up here, I am going to slacken off because I do want to build this body up. So I'm loosening off now. So that I can build that nice taper. But then as I get to this point, I'm now going to tighten up again because I want it to taper back down. Right. So I'm going to just tie this in. Just to finish, to tie this off. Get rid of that. A couple more turns there. And you can tie that off. Again, you know, make sure this is really tied down.
I can see why you left a gap at the head.
Yeah, because I'm going to put some dub in here as well. So in the end, but if you didn't do that, you'd just crowd that bead. Right, so we can just tie that off and we can do away with this one. And then I'm going to take a couple of marker pens. So the first one is just a really pale pink. This is just a Sharpie. And I'm going to colour that whole body. Now, I would sometimes when you use markers, you've got to be careful how soon you go on with like your resins and stuff because they can smudge. So now I'm taking this like a purple. But what I'm going to do with this one, I'm just going to sort of dab it on and then rub it off. So it creates like a smudge. So this is almost like fading on the back. Like that. You see that? So don't want it all over, just a little bit. Right. So now where it can all go the way of the pair. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to counteract this and tie in these lateral lines. So this is why it's not for everyone, because it is a little bit fiddly, but as with everything I do, I like to make my life hard work. So a little bit long this one, so I'm just going to cut it a little shorter. And what you want to do is you want to go under them first. And then pick up your first segment that you've put in. And then what I'm going to do is just hold that on my side and I'll catch that in. So now it's literally just a case of rotating the vise and following each segment that you've created. Just locking in that lateral line. Every time. And this also, you know, you could do this without the lateral line. There's no, you know, the fish don't bloody know. But you could, if you left the thread in and counter ribbed it, it actually gives you better segmentation as well.
It's fiddly, but it's more realistic.
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoy tying them, to be honest with you. But as I say, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, skills wise maybe, but when you have a look at the color of the fly or the nymph, that looks great, and it's a kind of orange and juicy pink. You know, it's really blending into each other. I don't know how you did that, but it looks perfect. And now you're adding some sidelines, which is always great.
Yeah, well, I'm going to put a hot spot on this as well in a minute once I've done this bit. So, and you can always, if you're not happy with the lateral lines, you know, you can get a bodkin in there and just move them about once they're in, if you want it, if you haven't got them right. Right.
Looks really juicy, buddy.
Cheers, mate. Right, so I'm just going to make sure those are tied off. We can get rid of those. Right, now we're just going to whip finish this. And then it's just doing a bit of resin now. So get rid of that. So first off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some, this is Raidzak Fluoro Red. I'm going to turn the fly upside down. Do a test on this, yeah, that's fine. So I'm just going to put a little hot spot underneath there like that, and just that. And then now it's just some Thin Man. Now the Gulf used to do one, and it was a clear resin. It had a pink hue in it, but you can't get it anymore, which is what, because I never used to colour the body in the pink. I just used to use the resin, but you can't get it anymore. So I had to adapt it slightly. So you don't need loads of this, you know. But I'm not like the worm that we did. I wanted that segmentation, so I used the super thin. This I actually want to build up a bit of body with the resin. And as I said before, gravity is your friend. So if you've got the fly in the right position, you can just manipulate that resin and it'll just sit right. So give that as that. Now what I would do with this, with me using the Gulf, I would varnish this normally, but I'm not going for today. I'll just do the last stage. Right. So and this is literally the same as the scruffy caddis we did last time. It's the same process here. So back in with your GSP.
That's so juicy, buddy. Really nice.
Thanks, mate. And now we're going to take some, this is Peacock Black, it's the Vicuna. The reason I use this, they're quite long fibres. But first off, for those that didn't see last time, I'm going to take some of it. I'm just going to do a normal dubbing noodle. Not too much. And this will help prop the next stage up. So just want a little bit there, just to act as support. And then it's literally the same dubbing, it's just a slightly different way of tying it in now. So what I want to do is take it out in, so they're in sort of long strands, if you will. So the best way of doing that is either out of a dubbing dispenser, or if you cut a corner off the packet, you can pull it out and it'll come out in strips. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just counterwind that. And this is almost like a veil rather than dubbing. So a couple of turns there, pull it back, lock it off in front. Now it'll look a mess at the moment, but I will show you shortly. So then I'm going to dubbing noodle again. but just a little bit. And this is just to neaten off in front of the head. Bit much there, I think. So let's pull that back. Lock that in. And then I'm going to get a black marker just to colour this up. Whip finish. And then cut that away. And I'm just going to take a dubbing brush. Find what I've done with it. Where the hell? Sorry about this. I seem to have lost a dubbing brush somewhere.
That looks like a really scruffy motherfucker. Huh?
Sorry about this. I have literally lost my dubbing brush somewhere.
Is it not juicy anymore, Alois?
No,
Alright.
that's a fucking juicy thing. Perfect stuff. Perfect stuff.
He's had too much beer.
Who, me or Alois? I've not had any, but I still managed to lose the dubbing brush somewhere. Right. I have no idea where that's gone, I'm afraid. Right, I'm going to have to improvise somehow. Right, give me 1 second, because what I'm going to do is, like the last one, I said, sorry, the last time I tied, I always use some water now, because that will always just stay like that, unless you do this step. So, I'm going to take a little bit of water. And I'm just going to dip the fly in it. Quality water as well, San Pellegrino, I'll have you know. And then this will help set that veil. But I would normally brush this out a little, but I cannot find that for love nor money.
So tap water's no good then?
No, it was literally, that was just on the side, so. But I would thin that out quite a bit if I could actually find my dubbing brush. But you can see the effect that would have when it's in the water.
Does it work better if you hold it under a tap and then smooth it with your fingers like you would a pike foot?
Yeah, no, well, normally what I would do is I'd just brush that out and some of that dubbing would actually pull out and it would just thin. And as you put it in water, I'd just leave that to dry now and it'll set like that. Obviously, you can trim the end off if you've got a bit too much, you know, if they're a bit long.
Nice.
But
Veils it nice, doesn't it?
does, doesn't it? If I could,
Oh, he's from the other side.
Yeah.
yeah, if I could find my dubbing brush, it would look even better. I have no idea where that's gone. Oh, I have found though. Found this. Hang on. Yeah. So you don't want too much, you know, because you still want to be able to see that trigger point that we've put in. And like I say, you know, in essence, those lateral lines are really for me, not the fish. You know, when that's wet in the water, you're hardly going to see them. But it's what you like doing, isn't it, I suppose? And that's it, I think. So any questions?
Thanks for a good night, Steve.
Yeah,
Well
no,
done,
thanks again, Steve.
Yeah, well done, Steve.
Thank
No,
you,
thank
Steve.
I've enjoyed it.
We can create a 2-in-1.
Really good one, buddy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Once more.
What did you say, Tim?
Go on, Alois, once more.
I've been living in
No.
for the last
Really
couple
good
of
one.
years, and
Really, really
you
good
might
one.
be-
I
you
really
might see
enjoyed
it's
it.
41.
Awesome stuff.
And you come from-
Normally, yeah, we would have been
I think,
muted in the back
amount of time and
for
effort
some
and money
TV
I've
stuff,
invested in the
but
business,
TV,
I would say
brilliant stuff. Really
35,000 was
good.
a very reasonable offer for 5%.
Thanks a lot.
I would like to hear what you've got to say as well,
Oh,
Peter.
yeah, no, thanks everyone. It's been really good.
Good luck, and I think.
Well done, Steve.
Take the
Yes,
advice
really
of
good.
today.
Really good.
Great tie.
No,
Well done, buddy.
thank you.
Good show. Really good show.
Really.
I'll see you all next week.
Yeah. There's a threat.
Yeah, cheers, Steve. Great ties.
Thank
As
you.
usual.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it. See
Take care, Steve. See you soon.
you later, buddy. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Paul.
A really high five.
Thanks all. Right, time. Come on.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
See you later, Dick. All right, Tim.